Welcome. You're listening to How I Did That, a storytelling podcast. Let's jump into today's episode.
Hello.
Nice to meet you. So excited to
Yeah,
connect.
nice to meet you too.
So first, thank you for joining me today because I just randomly reached out like you didn't know me. You didn't have to.
That's okay. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So first, I will let you introduce yourself.
So my name is Alex, and I started the Lots of Yums blog a couple years ago, I think in 2019, early 2019. It was kind of just an outlet for me to post my food creations. At the time, I wasn't even 100% vegan. I was probably like 98, and I know a lot of vegans hate when they're like, that's not vegan.
Yeah.
But in my head, that's what I considered myself. And then after following a lot of vegan food bloggers, I kind of, with them posting things about animal rights, them posting really delicious vegan recipes, I was like, yeah, I can be vegan and I should be. So I kind of just like made the switch. And so I've been vegan ever since. It's been fun. I now host virtual cooking classes. So I do like a couple each month, and that's been really fun for me because a lot of people that join actually are not vegan. So every time I sign on, I'm like, okay, like let me know if you're vegan or not. And I only have like one or two that are, and the rest are not. They're just doing something for fun or doing it because they follow me and the food looks good. So that's been really fun. But yeah, so I am based out of Pennsylvania in the Philadelphia area. I am 24, almost 25. Currently, I don't know, living with my whole family, none of which are vegan. So I live with my husband, my parents, my sister, and my brother. My other sister lives in California, and they love my cooking. So even though they're not vegan, they're very happy to be living with me and having me cook for them all the time. But yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Awesome. When you said that you started your blog, so you started it just for fun, but you were just vegetarian at the time, like mostly vegans.
So I went on and off vegan for a couple of years, but that was more of like the plant-based diet. It wasn't so much like veganism. So I had completely eliminated animal products before. And then I was always lactose intolerant because I think most people are because we're not baby cows. So I had cut out dairy for many years, meat for many years. And it was really like seafood and eggs that kind of were the last to go for me, which I feel like is very common. Seafood left, and then eggs, I was like, yeah, but and I couldn't find a justification for not eating it, even though now I totally see why we don't. So I would say like I was predominantly plant-based for like about 5 years now, and then fully vegan for about like 2 or 3. So I think also like I started it because I had always loved to cook. I've been cooking since I was like 11. Anything that I could get my hands on, anything my mom would let me buy from the store, like I would just love it. But always taking pictures of it, I'm like, but this does not look as good as it tastes. And it was super frustrating for me because I'm like, my food is so good and I know it is. But if it doesn't look that way, then it, like people don't trust you.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually had no idea anything about food photography, but I looked up on like Amazon or something a couple of years ago, this like light box. And I was like, oh, okay. Like that
looks like a giant stand with the rectangle, giant light.
It's kind of like that, but it's smaller. So it's like a small version of that. And I was like, okay. And I started like putting my food inside and just snapping pictures. And everybody was like, wow, like that looks so pretty. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, okay, like this is pretty easy. So that's when I started it. And then since then I've taken like a food photography class, and really learned how to actually take pictures of food. But yeah, it's been really fun. Like I had no idea where it would take me. I was just kind of doing it for myself and doing it so that my personal page wouldn't become a food blog. I wanted it like separate. So yeah.
When you were kind of like going on and off vegan, and you said it was the seafood and the eggs.
Yeah.
So at the time, when was this where you kind of started to become more plant-based? Because you said it's been 5 years, right?
I started looking on YouTube. I was kind of sick of the way I was eating. I was working in a restaurant. Like I had gained a lot of weight. It was a very stressful time. I was a full-time student. I was a full-time employee, and there was just a lot. And I was like, I'm sick of getting takeout. I need to switch up my diet. So it started with a diet, and I started looking on YouTube at all these like quick recipes, fast recipes, easy recipes. That's like what I needed. And I think I came across Caitlin. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but she's from My Bowl.
Yeah, Caitlin Shoemaker.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Shoemaker. Yeah, and I also came across Liv B. I don't know her full name because I
yeah,
just
that's
know it's Liv B. um, and so those two had awesome YouTube videos. I was like, this is easy. I was like, I don't really know anything about being vegan. Like, no one in my family is like that. And I think, too, for like my family comes from like Eastern Europe, Latvia. My husband's from Guatemala, but I think everybody is always like, yeah, but my culture and, you know, like those foods that I'm going to lose and like the authentic,
Yeah.
you know, like dishes that, you know, my grandmother makes, how can you say no to them? So my family was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know, but I just like started cooking these vegan things and just following them. And then from there, because I had my Instagram page, I followed them on Instagram. And then I found more people. Like Erin Ireland was huge for me. She always posts about like animal rights and activism. And then I just found a lot of people from there, and I would just watch their stories, and it kind of just set in as a reality to me that seafood is the same as, you know, animals on land, and there is no difference. So then I just decided one day, like after seeing a story of, I think it was honestly Erin Ireland, I was just like, yeah, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to contribute. I'm not going to be part of the reason, you know, that another animal's life is lost. Like it's not worth it. I have found all these vegan dishes that taste amazing, and I'm such a foodie. So like that was big for me. Like, I'm not just going to eat like greens and rice and beans. I know that, like, you know, that's sustainable. However, like I love my, you know, vegan Chipotle mayo and like tacos and, you know, all that stuff. So once I found that I could do that, I was like, there's no reason why I shouldn't.
Right, because like around the time when I went vegan, there were no options. When you went vegan, what did you see in the supermarket? Because I saw like
nothing. Like I remember seeing the vegan sections and like going with my husband, who at the time was not my husband, but we would like go after work to pick up some vegan things for me. And like there wasn't a vegan pizza. Like you definitely couldn't buy a frozen vegan pizza.
And the vegan cheeses that we found was like the One Daya brand maybe, or the whatever one brand it was not very good.
No.
It didn't melt properly.
Not a fan. No, not a fan. But I remember, it was very limited. I remember that my dad one time randomly by chance picked up like Miyako's, their shark farmhouse, which is like their Gouda.
Yeah.
Farmhouse. Yeah, so he randomly picked that up because someone in the store was vegan and offered it and said, oh, if your daughter can handle Daya, then like you should get her this because it's way better. But that was when they had like their old branding, like it was like a white box with like blue lettering. Like that was like way back in the day. That was like available, but for the most part, like if you went to a typical grocery store, it was really just like, I think Daya with the milks, it was like it was barely almond, it was soy, and then silk almond, you know, but there wasn't this like oat. Like I never saw oat milk up until maybe like 2 years ago. Like I started seeing it and I was like, okay, like that's cool. And now I see like pea milk and like pistachio milk. I'm like, oh my God, what's happening?
It's so weird because back in 2012, I just randomly one day decided to make oat milk by like blending oats and straining them. I didn't really know what I was making. And now I'm like, I made oat milk like 10 years ago.
So funny.
And then I see this experiment.
I started this.
Because you know the banana ice cream trend? Did you see that?
Yes.
Whole, like when I kept watching people's videos, I'm like, they just use frozen bananas.
Yeah.
And it make this whole ice cream. And now I saw this thing in the store where it's like, I don't remember the company, but it's like pints of ice cream. And they're just like chocolate, like cocoa powder and banana, or strawberry and banana.
Oh,
like someone took the banana ice cream trend and just packaged it. And they're selling, like they're pretty expensive for a little pint. That idea, like you just took it and put it in a box and people want to buy it. And so things like that, where it's easy, you could have done it at home, but when you put it in the store and make it gourmet, it makes people think that veganism is hard and that you can't make these things at home.
True. And I think that's also, so like you said, like because we've been plant-based for like many years, we've seen the shifts in grocery stores. So I have seen, you know, more brands come out, and now like it's actually really fun. Like I just found like a different type of bottled egg, you know, like how they have the Just Egg, and then I found a different brand. I'm like, cool, like we finally don't have to rely on the one brand. Like we can have our taste buds back and not settle, you know. But I feel like the expense will go down once there's more of a demand for it, the way it has for certain things, you know. Like the milks have definitely gotten cheaper, at least where I live. Like they they went like this because there like weren't that many options, and now it's kind of going down because there are a lot of different companies making them and producing them, so there's more competition in that. But yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to see the shifts in the grocery stores. And now, like when I go to, I don't know, you're located in Canada, right?
I'm in Windsor, so right at the like Michigan border.
Okay. Yeah. So out where I live, we have this store called Wegmans. It's like, it's popular on the East Coast. And they have a whole vegan section. Like you walk down, it's like a refrigerated, a freezer, and like a like shelving, and like it's all vegan.
Is it like a Whole Foods?
It's very similar. I would say it's cheaper, and they have like a lot of, but it is like Whole Foods. Like they have like specialty items, and you can kind of find everything there. But yeah, I just really like it, and I'll just like find new brands. I'm like, oh my God, like let me try this because it's new and I want to support it. It's been fun because it's gotten easier, but I think when I first started, I was like, oh shoot, like if I didn't cook, like what would I eat? You know, like I was like, this would be so boring. I'd be eating pasta and tomato sauce and like toast, and like that's fine, but like, you know, for foodies like me, like that's not acceptable.
Yeah. Back when you started, what was your diet like before that you were like sick and tired of? What did your diet heavily consist of, and what did you do? Like, did you slowly start to replace? You found vegan recipes to replace those specific things, or did you just completely change your diet and find random recipes online, things that you never would have eaten? Because I know some people try to switch out what they're already eating and make it vegan, and some people just take the plunge.
Basically, my diet consisted of everything. I eat everything. I am super open-minded. I don't mind if it's an authentic recipe from a country I've never heard of, I'll try it. But I definitely had meat and cheese in everything. Like I remember making dinner, like I'd be making like a pasta. I'm like, okay, what meat should go in here? And like I remember just thinking that, I'm like, should it be chicken? Should it be shrimp? And I just felt like it always needed to be in there, otherwise it wasn't complete. So when I did transition, I did find those replacements because I felt like they needed to be in the meal. Like it was just weird to not have it in the meal. So I think like at that time, Morningstar had a vegan chicken nugget. Not all of their stuff was vegan. I think they've converted a lot more now. But yeah, so I used those like chicken nuggets. By the way, I'm like not a chicken nugget person, but I was like, I'm gonna like it. Like this is my food now.
I don't like it.
Yeah. So I would use that in place. I wasn't a huge tofu person or tempeh person, so like I wasn't into making my own stuff. I'd rather just buy, because I was privileged enough to be able to buy those things, so I was like, I'm going to like the meat replacements and alternatives. My biggest suggestion to people is not to try foods that you wouldn't otherwise. Like, I think that's too intimidating to do. Stick to what you know. So if your favorite sandwich is a BLT sandwich, make the same BLT sandwich and then use like edgy veggies like rice paper bacon, or go buy the Hot for Food cookbook and make the mushroom or coconut bacon and just replace that. I don't see a reason to switch up your diet completely. I mean, go for it if you can. I couldn't personally. So yeah, I would say just like put in those replacements and find what you like, because there will be brands that you and I disagree on, you know, because we all have different taste buds. But I think I've now found like all my solid brands. Like I know what I like. I go into the grocery store, I get those, and then I find like a few experimental things and take those as well.
And so when you were transitioning, because you said that your family, they were like, what are you doing? And so was it your boyfriend at the time?
So yeah, he didn't really care, I guess. Like he was just like, okay, like you do you, whatever. We both worked at the same job. That's actually how we met. Really long hours in the restaurant, sick of eating the food at the actual restaurant, like always either getting takeout or something quick. But you know, so I was a full-time student, so I'd get up at 5:30. I would go drive to the train. I'd drive the train into the city, do my homework on the train, of course, because who does it the night before? And then go to classes. And then right from the train, I would walk to work until like 9, go to the store, come home, and get home at like 10. And then I'd have to do some extra homework. I'd have to make myself dinner, and I'd have to take care of myself. So it was a really hard schedule. We weren't really focused on like creating like fun dishes or anything like that. Like I was just like eating to eat. Like I just needed something in my body. So he kind of didn't care as much as like my family did, or like my mom. I was always like a big fish eater with her. Like I was like her like partner with that. And she's like, how are you like not going to eat that? You know, like she didn't really understand where I'd get those nutrients from or why I was doing it. So yeah, I would say it was mainly like my mom, because we were the foodies of the family. Everybody else just eats what they eat.
Okay, I was going to ask, because some people have a very difficult time transitioning when they're living with their family, and like the backlash that they get from relatives or going to like events like at Christmas time or Thanksgiving. Like, what about your extended family? Like, did you have issues when you were in social gatherings?
Yeah, so I remember it was when I had brought back like fish and eggs, like for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And we were at an event and they're like, so you're like vegan now? I was like, I still eat fish and eggs. Like I like really wanted to say it so that I could like still kind of fit in. And I remember them being like, oh, okay, like that makes sense. And then I like thought about it later. I'm like, that is like so weird. Like I don't really ask you what you're eating, you know, but I definitely felt the pressure a lot to know everything. Like I felt like everybody was looking at me as to what veganism is, you know, like, because they don't know anybody else that's vegan. So anything that I said, they thought all vegans did, or anything I ate, they thought all vegans ate. So I definitely felt a lot of pressure from that. Thankfully, I'm like kind of like strong-willed, so it didn't bother me that much. It bothers me when somebody else is like really loudmouthed and they'll just like go on about like how vegans are unhealthy, or like you need animals, or we've been doing this for like centuries and whatever. Like I just kind of stay quiet at that point, you know. Like I have a few extended relatives where I'm like, you're never gonna understand, and if we're not gonna have a real conversation, then like I'll just let it go. It doesn't matter that much. But for people who are willing to listen, like my cousins, like they're actually interested. So that is really positive and really helpful for me. But I definitely still feel that pressure of needing to know everything, you know, and needing to have a response for all their questions.
I feel like a lot with the vegan movement, especially seeing things in grocery stores and seeing more, I see a lot more ads for plant-based things online, and vegan patties and stuff coming out at the like burger joints for sure make people feel like, oh my God, like this movement's growing. A lot of people I know are kind of transitioning to that point because they want to feel better about themselves.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think propaganda has a huge part in it. So my dad is basically king of singing and reciting old commercials, old songs, old everything. And there's this one that like really stuck out to me, this old commercial where he goes, meat, it's what's for dinner. And I'm like, that's so like crazy that like used to be like what you see on TV. And I think what you were saying with like the patties being at burger joints, like I think Burger King has the Impossible Burger, and they had this advertisement of like male construction workers like eating the patty and being like, wow, this is really good. And like, you know, that type of propaganda really does make a difference. Because sometimes I even get the jokes like, me and my mom, like we made a soup. And by the way, we used to always make veggie soups. Like this isn't out of the norm, but now that I'm vegan, it's like there's a lot of attention brought to it. So we were all eating a veggie soup and my sister's boyfriend was like, I need some meat. And I was like, no, you don't. Like this soup is like perfectly substantial and totally good on its own, and it doesn't need to be in every meal. But I feel like it's the propaganda, and you know, like the guys need protein, and like there's like this obsession with like men and meat, and like you're not manly if like you're a vegetarian or vegan. So like I think in that sense it's easier for us as women to be able to choose our own diets because no one really looks at us for it. But like when the guys aren't eating the burger, it's like, dude, what? You know, like there's this kind of like negative association with guys and caring about health or animals or the planet or any of that.
When you see like a growing boy, right? You could, like a young growing boy, and you see parents making comments like, get some meat on you, or like, you need to bulk up a little, you need to be a man. It's always, oh, eat this burger, you need to eat more chicken, you need to eat more meat and beef, whatever. Yes. And that's always like the stuff associated with it. Have you seen The Game Changers?
I have, yeah.
Part in The Game Changers, I think it's in that movie where it talks about where the whole you need meat for protein came into play. Something about this German ad. Do you remember it? Because I don't remember what it was about.
I really don't, honestly. I'm so bad at recalling those specific details.
Yeah, I don't either, but it was something about how, like, I don't think it was intended for that Okay, you know what? Let me pull it up before I give everyone false information.
Okay.
It's really interesting to see where this came from. Okay, I cannot find it. So
I know, I was just looking too. I couldn't find anything.
Anyways, it was something about how like they didn't intend for it to become what it did, that like you only need meat for muscle or
Right.
for protein, and then it just kind of spiraled and it started going on TV more and more in like maybe I think it was the late 1900s, and then it just started to become a thing. Because in the beginning, if you think about like the early 1900s, just chicken itself was like a luxury item.
Oh, for sure. And I think it also had to do with cost, you know, like it was like that was something that you bought specially. Like it wasn't that funded by the government, and now you can go buy a pound of meat for like 50 cents, and that's like kind of insane. Like that's not like a normal cost. That's not what it actually cost to get to that grocery store, you know, like to raise those animals and to ship it and to package it and all of that. Like I think we have a really skewed perception of what things actually cost. So yes, vegan food seems more expensive, but it's because it's not being subsidized by the government, and it's not being, you know, like none of that is currently funded. So of course it's going to be more expensive. You know, when you don't have government support on something and, you know, all those subsidies, it's going to cost what it actually costs.
Like I actually always wondered why meat and other things were sometimes cheaper than vegetables. But then when you watch these documentaries and you kind of learn about the collusion between these industries and the government, you're like, they're subsidizing a lot of this. It actually might cost more to make the meat. Yeah. But it might take more resources to get that meat to you, but because the government subsidizes it, you think that it's very cheap. What you were saying about the soup is you guys ate vegetable soup all the time, but when you put the term vegan attached to it, people suddenly forget that they have been eating vegan food like potatoes or soup.
Guac and chips.
Yeah,
I mean, you eat bananas, you have smoothies, like what?
Yes, I'm like, have you ever never eaten a potato chip in your life? Like all of that's vegan.
Yeah.
So going to, after you started to make all these different dishes, then you had your blog. So how did you start growing lots of yums?
I've been in and out of a few jobs. So I was a restaurant manager at one place, ended up like leaving that job, like totally on good terms. Everything was fine. But I was like, you know what? I'm not going to get into the restaurant business again. Like, I don't like these hours. You work holidays and weekends, and that's just like so not ideal for like starting a family or wanting to be with the family that you already have. And I was like, if I am able to not, I will not go back. And so I started working for my parents' company. They own an insurance brokerage. So I was like, okay, no idea what insurance is, but let me get into this. And so I started working for them, and then an opportunity presented itself to work in a restaurant again. And I was like, I said I was never going to do it, but I'm going to do it. Started doing it again. It was a vegetarian place. And it started off like with really nice hours. And I was like, oh, perfect. This is like the reason why I didn't want to go back. And then it got back to those long hours. Just eventually after a few months, it got back to that. So that was like in the summer of last year is when it started like dwindling down, and I ended up leaving again. I was like, I can't do this. Like I said, no restaurants, I mean no restaurants. So then my husband and I celebrated like our wedding in September. We had gotten married previously, but we had our celebration in September. So we had it in our backyard, which was the plan all along. And then after that, I was like, now it's time for me to make the decision of what I want to do. So I started really focusing on myself. I went back to my parents' company because it's the most flexible hours. Obviously, my parents are super great bosses. So I'm able to take off when I need to, take a vacation, take a rest day, like a mental health day, all of that. So then I was able to focus more of my extra energy and time into lots of yums. So I was like, okay, like, I don't necessarily want to be Instagram famous, right? Like that's not a goal. Like that doesn't achieve anything. So what do I want to do with what I'm doing? And I just wanted to reach more people. Like I wanted to be a resource for people that people could reach out to and ask questions. So like when people ask me a question about veganism when they're not vegan, like I get so happy because I'm like, I did not have this when I wasn't vegan. Like I had nobody that I felt comfortable enough going to, or that was small enough also that I knew would respond to me, like it's just all of that. So I just want to be that resource for people. Come like the fall, I had followed Foodtography School on Instagram for years just because the pictures are beautiful. It's a Broma Bakery. Her name's Sarah.
Yes, I've heard of Broma Bakery. Okay.
Yes. So she's fantastic. The class I highly, highly recommend. It's like a one-stop shop. Like, yes, you can get all of this information from YouTube and free resources, but that takes a lot of determination and effort and stuff. I don't have time to know, like, to, I guess, research who is a good resource. And I knew that she was. So I was like, I'm going to invest in myself and I'm going to do this. I'm going to make my photography better. And I was kind of getting to that point again. Remember how I said earlier, my food wasn't looking as good as it tasted. Mm-hmm. So I started to get to that point again. I'm like, yes, it's a massive like improvement from, you know, my phone under the yellow light at 9 p.m. when I'm just like snapping a picture, but it's still nothing that makes you go like, oh my goodness. So I invested in myself. That's how I perceive it. And I bought the class and I took the course and I started learning more about how Instagram could provide me with income. And that really interested me. And I thought like, I was like, okay, I mean, there's no way I can do this, but like, yeah, I have like a little bit of like it's interesting because sometimes I'm like, I can't do this, but also I'm still gonna try, you know, like I'll be negative, but I'm also still positive, you know. I had a little bit of that in me. I'm like, yeah, okay, this isn't my thing, but also maybe I'll still try to do it. And so just with like, you know, sponsored posts or brand collaborations or partnerships and things like that. So that really interested me because I was like, you don't need, you know, a humongous following. I don't also want that to be a goal because I think part of our generation's problem is seeing the likes and the followers and having that affect our daily mental health. And I just think it's not good. So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't doing it for that purpose. Like I wanted to really set my intentions and my goals. So I knew I wanted to improve in photography. So I took that course. I also just say photography now as like a term. It's food photography. I know. That was a really fun class to take. And then I just kind of saw my blog expanding a little bit. Like more people were reaching out to me, more people were interested in my food. Like I started seeing more engagement. I was like, oh, this is like really cool. Like I have a lot of fun doing this. I have time to do it, energy to invest in it, all of that. So yeah, that's where I am today.
That's very exciting. And people are like, you know, I love all your recipes. They're so easy. I'm going to try this. And you feel like, yes, like I'm actually helping someone who might be making that transition or who might just be looking for more recipes.
Exactly. And it's so motivating. Like you're just like, yes, this is why I'm doing this.
Right. And you're like, okay, like I want to produce good content now for people because people are looking at it. When you took the food photography course, how long was it?
It's a 4-week course. It's set up that way, but you can really take it at your own pace because you have lifetime access to it. But it's set up as like a 4-week course. So there are like 4 units and then like a few classes in each unit. I believe it's lighting and composition, but don't quote me on that. I'm just going to kind of give you an overview. So let's say the unit 1 was lighting and composition. Second unit was about like styling. Third was about marketing. Fourth was about like Instagram. So it was broken up like that. And I really liked it because I learned way more than I ever have about how to photograph food. And it's actually the first time I picked up a real camera, like a DSLR. Like my dad had one sitting at home, which I was super, super grateful to be able to use because that's obviously a huge investment and not everybody can handle that. But he had been into photography like a couple years ago and he just has it sitting here. So I was able to use that. But it was super intimidating. I was like, the iPhone, as long as you have good lighting, like iPhone picks up, like has really good quality pictures. So it was weird to me to have to like adjust it and sometimes have blurry pictures. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like it's autofocus on the iPhone versus like this new camera was this like huge chunky like thing that I didn't really know how to work. So I'm still getting the hang of it. Like I know my pictures are not perfect, but they're a huge, huge upgrade from what they used to be. So
did she tell you what kind of like camera, tripod, like a ring light, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. She goes over a lot of she also has like an iPhone course too for like people who aren't able to afford the DSLR, which I think is really great because you still can learn composition and lighting and having a diffuser in front of your light source and all of that. So she does have that. But yeah, she goes over a ton of recommendations, including like her backdrops, props that she uses, like her favorite companies to buy things from. She goes over basically beginner, intermediate, and advanced cameras, like where you should be and what you should be using, which I was like, I'm just going to be using what I have. I mean, she's just full of knowledge. And I think it's really helpful for somebody like me who's just starting out, because it's not like, first of all, I'm not investing like tens of thousands of dollars, right? I'm also not spending like hours upon hours upon hours researching like just lighting on YouTube, right? Like I know that I'm able to do that. I know that people provide free resources, but to have her explain it in such a good way, because she is getting paid for it, right? So when you have like a teacher, which is, it pretty much feels like it's one-on-one, just because like it's just you and the course and whatever. So when you have like somebody teaching you exactly what to do, and she gives you homework too after each unit, and like you create a mood board for yourself and, you know, figure out your style, and all of that was just so helpful for me that I would have never thought of to research. Yeah. You know, like I would have never thought to look up like, how do I create a mood board? Like I didn't even know what that was.
What is a
mood board? People like yeah, I know, right? Okay. It's basically where, so this is how I interpreted it. She says what to do. So you basically get 6 to 8 pictures that you absolutely love. So what I did is I went through Pinterest and I went through Instagram, and I saved every picture that I really, really, really liked. And then I started eliminating them, like if I didn't love them. And then I tried to see like patterns. So you try to see patterns of composition. Like, do you have more than one dish, or is it just, you know, the single thing? Do you like geometry? Are you into like the circles and the squares and stuff and repetition? Are you into dark mood, like a dark mood? Or are you into light and airy? Or like all of that matters and makes you realize recognize your style. So I had created a mood board, and I was like, I had no idea that this is my style. Like I was just trying to achieve a pretty picture that I thought I would like. And I had no idea that the props you use and the lighting you use and the edits you use, first of all, it's like, it makes your feed cohesive. Mm-hmm. It also creates like a branded look, and it just makes you happy about what you're posting. Because I remember even in the beginning, like I would post stuff and I was like, this just doesn't feel like me. Like I know it's a beautiful picture and people may prefer this over what I prefer, but if I'm not doing something I love, then it's never going to come off as my authentic self, and people aren't going to appreciate it as much as the stuff that I love to post. So now if you look at my feed, like it's very cohesive, and it wasn't before. Like it was just kind of a little bit all over the place. But now, like I even asked on an Instagram poll, I was like, can you tell that the picture that I put, like when you see my picture on the feed, can you tell it's mine before you see my username? And like 98% of the people responded yes. And I was like, that's really cool. Like that's what I'm like going for. And I never knew it.
Yeah, because I'm looking at your previous pictures, and there was not as much consistency as there is
Correct.
Now.
Correct. Even though I'm making the same food and I'm eating the same things, like none of that has changed. It's just the way I'm presenting my food to people has totally changed. And I also used to think like that in order to be a successful like food blogger, you had to, you know, put out these like gorgeous flat lays with like really beautiful, expensive dishes and a lot of different things going on. So I used to try to, even in the beginning of photography school, like she does a really good job at that and like with styling. And I was like, oh gosh, okay, this is going to be like really hard for me to try to do. And then once I made the mood board, I was like, but that's not what I'm into. Like I can appreciate the beauty and the effort and work that goes behind those photos. But for me, like what I want to post doesn't look like that. So I feel like just developing your own sense of style, it also has given me inspiration, motivation to keep going with what I'm doing. Like, I'm just like, this is so much fun because I'm creating work that I love. I don't care if nobody else loves it because I love it. And that's the reason I started this to begin with, was just to like show people good food, follow me or don't follow me. This is fun for me.
Right. Like when she said, make the mood board and you figured out your style, is it only using specific props or colors in your background as well?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to pull up my mood board just so that I can reference it. So basically I have, it is kind of the same props. Like it'll be the same napkins, sometimes different plates, but you're always going to see like the same color scheme. And this, like, you're never going to see like green, blue, pink, white plates in my mood board because that's not what I like. I only have white, black, and a gray. So even though those are 3 different colors, they're all kind of the same. They're just like different shades. So you also pinpoint the colors that are on your mood board, which is huge for me because I'm like, now I understand why I am drawn to certain things. Like I really like the darker greens. I really like the beige, the gray. So when you go through my like feed, my more recent feed, don't go way back, but you can see it's like a dark red or a dark orange, like a lot of browns, like tans, all of that. But yeah, I use the same napkin and everything. If you see that, I just can't help it. I love it so much. So it's not really on purpose. Like I think I'll get better eventually, you know, and start to use different types of props. But I think it looks like way more cohesive than it did even when I was using I don't know. I feel like I used to use all different types of dishes just because I thought that that's what I was supposed to do.
I thought that you're supposed to use a variety.
I feel like some people can get away with it, but then you have to always do that. And I just don't have it in me to always do that, you know, like I don't know. So it was a super eye-opening class for me, and I learned stuff that I did not think I was going to. And I think that's what was the best benefit from it, is not that I only learned the stuff that I knew I was going to, like lighting and composition. I was like, you better go over that, right? Because it's a food photography class. But, you know, other things like developing your style has been huge for me, because it's allowed me to, now I go in and out of a scene and like setting up, and it takes me like 30 minutes. It used to take me like an hour and a half to like set up the scene, play, take pictures, be frustrated, and then I would just like quit. Like I was like, whatever, hope I have one. Now I'll like look at a picture, I'm like, wow, I love this, I'm done. Like I'm done. And then I go and upload it right away, and even the editing, like that's within that 30 minutes. Like it's 30 minutes for the whole thing. And it used to take much longer than that. And I feel like it's just, once you get to know your style and get to know what it is that you like, it's just quicker and it's more fun.
So then in terms of food props, like you said, you have a 3-color plate, 1 or 2 napkins, and then a couple of the food props, kind of the same color of spoons, same color of like towels in the background.
So I have a board. So I have a couple things. So in front of my window, I put a sheet. That's to diffuse the light that's coming in, because first of all, I'm obsessed with the blogs that have the shadows and the bright light, but I don't know how to photograph that way, and that's not my mood.
What kind of blogs are those? I want to see what a picture of that would look like.
Okay, so gosh, let me see if I can pull one up here.
Yeah, because I do see a lot of the same napkin in your backdrop, but I never noticed because I'm always focused on the food. Like even just looking at your feed, if now that you point out the napkin and I'm looking down the rows, I'm like, it is the same napkin, but I never noticed.
I know.
Really smart.
It's so funny because I'm like, they're probably tired of this napkin. I use the same backdrop for every single shoot, and sometimes it looks really different based on the lighting outside, or based on whether I'm blurring or doing an overhead or a 45-degree angle or a straight on. Like it always looks different. Okay, so it's here, I'll type it in the chat. It's Miri Bai is the name, so look that up. She has a lot of really cool shadows, not in every picture, but once you pull up your feed, like you'll see it. So like you can see the coffee thing shadows, and then if you scroll down to the blue towel with like that plate of like French toast or whatever it is, and then the drinks, like they're fun, like they're so fun.
Have you know who Zachary Bird is?
Yes.
His photos are always popping, like colorful burger and like the colorful like McDonald's bright yellow backdrop. Yeah, it reminds me of that kind of.
I don't even know why we just got on that topic. I kind of forget what your question was. But yeah, it's really cool to see other people's like moods and styles. And it's good once you find your own, because you stop comparing yourself and you stop trying to do a little bit of everything, and you just kind of do what works for you.
That is something I never would have thought of. Thank you for that. That's really interesting.
And I think that's important too when you get into like food photography and stuff, is you don't want to be super intimidated and think that you have to do it all, because that's going to shy you away from actually getting down to figuring out your style and what you like to do. So for now, like I have like one shelf, it's a loaded shelf, but I have one shelf with like all my props and stuff. And I'll have like 3 or 4 of the same bowl, even though usually I only use like 1 or 2 in a shot. But I have them just in case, and they came in a pack anyway.
That's nice.
For most of my things. But yeah, I mean, because I think that's what really scared me in the beginning, is I would like go to thrift stores and, you know, go to different places and buy all these props and had no idea what my style even was. So I was just buying these random things. And now it's like, there's no use for them. Like, I don't need them. I don't want them. And until I'm like able to have, like a whole like a whole thing to myself, like I'm good with my one shelf.
So you mentioned that the last part of the course that you took was about Instagram, right? And about like making an income off of Instagram. But then you were saying that when food blogs grow so big and people see like, the K next to your name after you have 10,000.
Yeah.
When people start to see that, it kind of intimidates them. Like, I don't think this person's even going to reply to my message.
Yeah.
But then when you want to make income, don't you need like a very, very large following? But then what you're saying, how would you achieve that?
Yeah. So a lot of it comes from talent, right? So like, people follow you because you have good talent. People don't just follow you and then you get talent. It kind of goes hand in hand a little bit. However, brands are reaching out to, I think like you and I would be considered like nano influencers. So like micro influencers is under 10,000, but like nano influencers are under a couple thousand. And then obviously influencers are just like when you have a ton of followers. So brands are really interested in engagement. Some people who do have like 8,000 followers, they would be like a mini influencer. But if they don't have good engagement, then it really doesn't matter. Like, that number is just a number then. As long as you have the talent and can support, I guess, like when you're reaching out to brands, like you send your media kit, right? Mm-hmm. So yes, followers are going to influence a little bit how much they're willing to pay you. But in my opinion, it's like getting your foot in the door. Mm-hmm. So if you get your foot in the door for like a price that you wish was higher, but you think one day will be higher, just accept it and do it. Because it's almost like taking that front desk job at a location because you one day want to be, a CEO or whatever you want to be in that company. You have to sometimes just get your foot in the door. So being a nano influencer has allowed me to get my foot in the door in a lot of different places. And it's been fun because I'm like, yeah, I know I'm not getting exactly what I should be getting. However, I have confidence that one day I will. And this is also just like a basis. Like, it's like a starting front with like getting connected with the company and getting to know a person's name that works in the marketing department and being able to be like, hey, we worked together 6 months ago. Like, would you want to do it again? By the way, my photography is way better. My rates are a little bit higher, but remember what happened last time? Like, you had good engagement on the post. So like things like that. I mean, it's hard not to be intimidated by not having a lot of followers, but at the same time, it's just not everything. So.
Okay. That's also a very good point, because I had always thought, and this is what I'd always been hearing, is that you need like over 10,000 followers or a very verified account to be able to make money off of social media. And so now let's move forward to your virtual cooking classes.
Yes. It all started, actually, the idea in my head a couple years ago. My best friend is vegetarian, and we weren't hanging out as much because we had just gotten our full-time jobs, and it was just really hard to make time to see each other on the weekends. We were both dating people, and it was kind of all over the place. So I asked her if she would want to have like a wine Wednesday or like one night a week where we cooked together, drank some wine, and that was it. Because she was vegetarian, it was easy to be like, can we just make it vegan? Obviously. She's like, oh my God, yeah, of course. She eats a lot of vegan food anyway. So it was like not an issue. So we started cooking together every single week, and we would kind of teach each other things in the kitchen. So like, she taught me, like if you want to make limes juicier, you roll them on the counter. And then I taught her to like, when you smash garlic, it makes it easier for the peel to come off. So just like little things like that. We would just like cook together, like teach each other what our moms and grandmothers have taught us like along the way. And then like a few weeks into it, my other friend was like, hey, like I remember you guys were doing this, and we have like a little girl gang group. Like I have a group of like 8 friends, but none of them were really available to do it. We kind of opened it up to everyone, but it was just me and my vegetarian friend who decided to do it. But a couple weeks later, my other friend was like, hey, like I actually do have time and I want to hang out with you. So can I join too? And I was like, yeah, but the food's vegan. And she's like, I don't care. I just like good food. So she started coming into it. We would make like really fun things like loaded sweet potatoes, like empanadas, tacos, different types of salads. And it was just fun to eat what other people want to eat, because I always cook obviously what I want to eat, but they introduced me to so many different types of foods, which was really fun. And now we have like 4 people in the group that do it consistently every week. And so it's a lot of fun for me to teach people how to do things, because my one friend that joined, actually 2 of the friends that joined, don't cook like at all, like are really bad, don't know how to like cut a pepper, and like things like that. And like it never annoyed me. Like I was like, well, this is fun. I get to teach them how to do it, you know, and then they can bring it back home and do it for themselves. So I have always been in that position, like wanting to help people in the kitchen make some really good food. So fast forward to a couple months ago, I guess. Do you know Alexa Fueled Naturally?
Mm-hmm.
I love her. She is like hands down one of my favorite bloggers. She posts really like authentic, just for anybody listening that doesn't know, she posts really authentic Mexican recipes. Her whole family's from Mexico. Like her recipes are really easy. They're not intimidating. They always taste amazing. I barely have to adjust anything. And I can't say that very often for other people's recipes, just because I like them obviously my own way. I add my own amount of spice, or I'll add like it to be creamier. So for her recipes, I'm absolutely obsessed. And she started virtual cooking classes. And I took one and I was like, that was so much fun. I was like, I love cooking, I love creating in the kitchen, and I love following recipes. But that, I had no idea how much fun it would be. Like just literally following somebody else, them giving their own kitchen tips, like them telling you about this recipe and what makes it authentic or what makes it like, you know, a certain way. And so I was like, I could do this. Like, I want to do this. This is what I want to do, like for different types of recipes. And I took another one of her cooking classes with my sister just to kind of get my sister's feedback, because she's also not a huge cook. She loves baking and she loves all of my food and doing stuff with me, but she's not a huge cook. And she took it and she's like, no, that was so much fun. Like that was a blast. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I got some feedback through stories, you know, just like asking followers if they would be interested, if they would want to do it. Although people were very like excited about it in the stories, when it comes to actually purchasing something, it's obviously a lot more of an investment and something that you think about. So most people are just like, I don't know, cooking class, like I don't really know what that is. Like I'm not going to do it. So for the first like month or so, I didn't sell anything. And I was like, you know what, like maybe this isn't for me. Maybe this isn't the route I want to go. Maybe it's just fun for me to do, or fun to, you know, have my weekly cooking nights with my friends. And then like I was like, you know what, but I also haven't advertised it at all. Like I posted it like one time. I can't just expect people to like show up on my site and just like buy it without knowing who I am and like what I can offer and things like that. So I actually started like thinking kind of in terms of that way, like what can I give for free that will make people be like, oh, well, what does she offer not for free? You know, if she's giving this away for free, then, you know, what else does she offer? So I started posting a lot of my stories, kitchen tips. And I started just like telling people like, hey, this is how you replace an egg in vegan cooking or vegan baking. You know, you can do the flax, you can do the chia, you can do banana, you can do yogurt, you know. So, and then I was like, people love free things, right? So I hosted this plant-based challenge in January, so it's almost over. But I opened it up to everybody that wanted to join. I was like, this is totally free. I'll maybe post a recipe or two in there that is not on my blog, right? Like an exclusive recipe. But I'll basically just be there to be your resource for anything vegan cooking related, buying groceries, anything you need to help you be vegan for this month. And I know there's this whole thing, like I know it's plant-based, but they're eating vegan food. So that was my main point is I just wanted more people to see how good vegan cooking and vegan foods can be.
Oh.
So I hosted that and I had like a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of people join it. And it was really fun to see people's questions and to have people try recipes, to have people post their recipes. I was like, wow, this is like a blast. Like it's so much fun for me to, and I didn't really have to do a lot. Like I would like check in with people and see how they were going, like answer their questions. But then once I started doing that, like I feel like I got a lot of trust from people because they started, you know, just like getting to know me, and it wasn't just some stranger on the internet. Like it was somebody who they had tried their recipes or they had like spoken to like a lot. So then I started getting like some bait on the cooking classes. So they started like officially in January. And they've just been so much fun. Like I've loved them. I've hosted a couple so far and I plan on doing more. I just feel like I need to just continue doing what I'm doing and gaining more people's trust and giving more free advice and all of that. And then hopefully it can be something that I do, you know, long term, because it's really fun doing them.
That is awesome. And that's so much fun. So like with Alexa Fueled Naturally, did she just do Zoom classes that people jumped on? You could see everybody else who was cooking and everyone would just ask their questions?
Yeah, so she has like a lot of people join because she's so huge. A lot of people don't have their video on, but some people do, and it's really fun to see because you see other people cooking and you're kind of doing it at the same time, and there's this like sense of community. So I don't personally know if the people that have joined hers are vegan or not. Like, I honestly have no idea who her like follower fan base is, but I know for mine it's really fun having people's videos on and just seeing like them cooking at the same time as you and them like making your food and like giving feedback on your food, and you know, having them say it was so much fun is just it's like music to my ears. Like, it feels really good when people are like, yes, this is so much fun. I'm like, that was my goal. Like, I wanted you to feel the same way that I felt when I took Alexa's classes.
Okay, so with your classes, are they just a Zoom link that people can hop on?
Yeah, so I basically have them set up on my site, lotsofyums.com, and when they click on the cooking classes and purchase one, they get an ingredient list, all the details, the Zoom link, the password, like everything they'll need to buy, any kitchen equipment they'll need. And then I just see them at the time of the class. We'll just all sign on. And most people, because I have smaller classes, we have our videos on, which is really fun. Like, I feel like people feel more comfortable when it's like, oh, there are only like 6 more people. Like, it's fine. Like, I'll put on my video,
yeah, for sure.
You know, versus like having a class of like 85 people. You're like, no, I'm going to keep it off. So it's just a little bit, yeah, it's like an intimate class, but I really enjoy it. And I honestly wouldn't have wanted to start huge. And I think that also goes back to what we were talking about followers. Like, I think you're meant, like, when you grow, like, is when you're meant to grow. So like, I'm personally not ready yet to have like, let's say 100,000 people looking at what I'm doing and judging what I'm doing. And you already know like all the negative stuff that comes along with having such a big audience. So I think things come when they're supposed to, in a way. I know that sounds super cliche, but for the cooking classes, like, I wouldn't have wanted to start with a large audience because I like tripped up. Like, I remember during my first cooking class, I was like, okay, so like to cut an onion, and I looked at the onion and I was like, I legitimately don't remember how I cook onions. Like, I was so nervous. I was like, how do I, and I was like, you cut it. And I was like, what do I was just like, oh my goodness, this is a mess. But it was totally fine. Like, you know, I played it off. I don't think anybody really even noticed, but I remember panicking in my head, you know, and had there been a lot more people, it probably would have been really stressful for me because I wouldn't have been able to like bounce back as easily.
And I haven't actually seen a lot of vegans do cooking classes. Or maybe they just don't advertise it as much. So then in terms of your blog, like, so you actually, you said that you use 1 or 2 of the recipes on your blog for your cooking classes, or do you always come up with new recipes for them?
So it depends. So for some of them, I take recipes that I do on the blog, but I still haven't made it like a blog where I like write things. I really just right now post recipes just to get my content out there and not to be overwhelmed with like all the little things and having to explain why I do things and making a story and all of that. I know eventually that's probably where I'll go with it just because that's what a blog is. But so that's kind of what my cooking class is. So like, yes, I have the recipes posted, but like we do a whole lot more than just like go over the recipe. Like, I'll tell you like the origin of the food or why vegans use nutritional yeast, you know, like what is the flavor of it? What even is it? And so you know, in my last cooking class, we were making the baked mac and cheese. And somebody asked, they were like, well, what's the difference between white pepper and black pepper? And, you know, that's something that you can't ask when you just see a recipe. And sometimes you'll just be like, well, I don't have white pepper, I'm just going to use black pepper. And then you don't realize why it tastes a certain way. Right. So it was fun to be able to go over that. I was like, well, you know, like white pepper, like it's not as spicy, you know, like, yes, it's still a pepper, but there are a million different types of peppers. Like, you know, there's even chili powder and cayenne and all of those are types of peppers. But the black pepper is just like a little bit spicier. So when you do the white pepper, it's finer and it spreads more throughout the dish. And she was like, oh, okay. And that was that. But that's something that you can't ask, you know, when you're just looking at a recipe online.
So now with like being plant-based, being vegan, what are your diet staples?
My diet staples. Okay. Tacos, because anything can go in them. I throw in any veggies I have. It really doesn't matter. And I always have tofu on hand, so I'll do that. Or I'll use like the soy chorizo from Trader Joe's, or just beans as a base, honestly. Any veggie, and then always my Chipotle mayo. I don't know if you just saw my latest post, but like I literally,
so good.
I literally use that on everything. Like I swear by it. It's so good. So tacos for sure. I always like some kind of Asian noodles. I don't really have I don't really know where in Asia, because it's just that kind of flavor.
Many. Like if you go to like a Chinese grocery store, there's like 100 types of noodles there.
Right. So that's why I hesitate saying it's from a certain country, but it's just within that continent. Yeah. So I'll always do like some kind of like peanut sauce, or just like a soy sauce base with noodles, sauteed veggies, and that's always a staple for me, and really easy to throw together for lunch, especially when they're rice noodles, because they take like to cook and it's beautiful. But I would say those are like my top 2 meals. And then for the things, like a lot of times we just do oatmeal family. Like my sister will be like, okay, who wants oatmeal? And we all just are like, yeah, or like today, no. And so that's really nice to have that.
Are you a big like smoothie person and or desserts?
So I am not, honestly. I think like I do love smoothies, but it's hard for me to eat fruit in the morning. I don't know why, that sounds really weird, but like if they're not bananas, like it's like way too much sugar like right away. I am obsessed with fruit. Like I love strawberries, watermelon, blueberries, all of that. But in the morning, like I'll have like a chocolate smoothie or like a tahini smoothie, or, you know, like something like that. But I won't have something like a wild berry smoothie. It just doesn't sound good to me. I don't know why, that sounds so weird. But yeah, so I do like smoothies. I don't make them as often as I should.
What kind of vegan desserts are kind of like the quick and easy staples? Like, for example, like people make persimmons chocolate pudding, like a 1-ingredient chocolate pudding and things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually really interesting, because also when I started the food photography course, like her Broma Bakery is like all desserts, right? Like she does some savory stuff, but it's mainly desserts. And so I learned from her being able to shoot desserts really well. And I was like, yeah, but how do I shoot this burger though? Like, how do I like shoot something that isn't picture perfect? Mm-hmm. And, you know, like everybody wants to eat a brownie, you know, like when you see a brownie, you're just like, wow, that's stunning, you know, and the colors are always perfect. So it is definitely hard to shoot savory food. So that was a little bit discouraging for me in the beginning. I was like, you know what, it's fine. I'll just never be able to do it. I have to convert to dessert only page, and that's what people want to see. But it's actually it's been a huge challenge for me to just post. No, I don't just post savory. I think I post sweets sometimes, but most of the sweets that I post are not your typical like American over the top sweet thing. Like I try to warn people too, because I'm like, that's not what I eat. So that's not what you're going to get when you make my recipes. Like I have these amazing gluten-free almond thumbprint cookies, and they're so good. But if you're expecting something that's as sweet as a sugar cookie that you buy at the store, like you're going to be disappointed, because you're going to taste the almond. Like so yeah, when I make desserts, they tend to have like a saltier edge to them, or more of like a plain flavor rather than just like an overload of sweetness.
I see. And I think you're right. Like people have to kind of get used to the palate of vegan eating, because sometimes I'll get comments where it's like, this doesn't taste like the Costco sugar cookie. And I'm like, it's not going to, because it doesn't have all the same, first of all, the same like processed ingredients, right? The chemicals or whatever else they add. And even if it was using almost the same ingredients home baked, I'm not using white flour, and that completely changes things.
Yeah.
It's going to taste different. And I think that's something people have to realize, because yes, with like burgers and stuff, people kind of are getting that spot on taste, but with a lot of desserts, like maybe for example, things that use egg yolk or creme brulee or other things, you will probably not get 100% the exact taste. If you
I agree. And I think that's also sometimes a little bit intimidating for us to like post recipes, because I don't want people to, obviously I want people to try it, right? But I also want like a pre-warning, like have an open mind when you make this, and you'll be pleasantly surprised.
But don't compare it to like.
Right, yeah, exactly. If you expect it to be a certain way, then like you might be disappointed, because I'm not trying to imitate that. You know, like I'm going for this similar type of like flavor or like reminiscent of that, but I'm not going for like like you said, like pinpointing that Costco like sugar cookie. Like, no, that's not it. These aren't called Costco sugar cookies, so that's not what you're getting.
Right.
But
right.
Yeah.
In your area, like, are there a lot of vegan restaurants, or like, do you usually cook more at home, or do you ever do vegan takeout?
So I thankfully love cooking because there's nothing near me. The closest thing from me is like 45 minutes away, and it takes about an hour or so to get into Philly. So Carlos and I will go out, my husband and I, Carlos, will go out to the city to eat at like vegan restaurants. Honestly, we do that kind of often. We did that like a couple times a month, but around here, no. I definitely have to cook.
Out. In places that are not major cities, there are still not too many vegan options. So I was just curious.
Oh my gosh. I just wanted to say, I actually went out to eat with Carlos at like the closest town to me. And we consider it our town, but like we don't actually live inside it. It's like 15, 20 minutes out. They had a quinoa veggie burger. And I was like, okay, I mean, this is their only vegan option, so I'm going to order it, right? It came out, it was literally just quinoa on a bun. Like quinoa.
What? It wasn't a quinoa burger. It was just quinoa.
Literally just quinoa. And I was like, why? Who? What? Like I was like, I just have so many questions. I have so many questions. Who would want to eat that? But yeah, so that if that doesn't sum it up for you, that's where I live. Okay. People think we want to eat quinoa burgers.
Yeah, and that kind of thing is like when people go out to eat at like meat heavy or like non-vegan restaurants, and then someone says, okay, I want to try their only vegan option. Those restaurants don't specialize in vegan food, and a lot of the times you will just get a very like bland salad or a burger that doesn't taste good at all, or something that's like overly priced, and just maybe like fries. Right. And so I would not recommend to like starting out vegans. Like you won't like the food if you don't go to a proper vegan restaurant or you don't make it at home.
For sure.
That's kind of funny though. And that sucks because you wasted your money on it and it was like just hey, I mean, quinoa's healthy, but like probably had no taste on a burger patty. Moving forward, where do you hope to see yourself in like the next 5 to 10 years?
Ooh, okay. So honestly, I hope to make this my full-time thing. That's kind of the direction that I am pushing for. Although I love my parents and I love working for them, it would be awesome to have like my own thing that I have, created and developed into something bigger. So I really hope I can continue with the cooking classes. It's something that I honestly I feel like is missing from veganism in general. Like there's no like Food Network dedicated to vegan food, and even those types of shows like for me are so fun to watch as a foodie, but it's difficult because if they're serving meat and cheese and everything, like you're just not represented. There's no representation. And it's, like you said, frustrating to go out to restaurants where they don't serve like vegan things and you're just eating fries sometimes.
In Food Network or Hell's Kitchen or whatever things that are on TV, you will never see any show that's purely vegan. It's always like, oh, they'll give you an ingredient to cook with, go make this food. And now we're going to compare and like the winner will get the prize, but it's always like a random ingredient that's probably not vegan and their dishes are never vegan. So
right. So there's actually a TED Talk by Erin Ireland that I highly recommend everybody go watch. I think it's only like 10 minutes. I'm totally lying. I don't remember the exact amount of minutes, but definitely go watch it. She talks about these like Food Network shows and how they have a responsibility to have more vegan food and more representation in that type of food, because like we were saying earlier, like it's propaganda. Like if you don't advertise it, how would people think it's normal? Like somebody has to be the one to make that change and make it seem more normal. So that's honestly what I want to do with my cooking classes. Like it's been really fun to not have vegans on there because they're trying my food and they otherwise wouldn't have. And it's almost like forcing them to make one of my recipes. I'm like, it's good. I promise. Like, make it. I want to grow with that. And I would love to be able to like partner with brands that I love and really just go in that direction. Make lots of yums like my own personal thing. And I don't really know how, or I don't really have an exact plan. I actually have like a schedule for myself every single day of everything I'm going to do for Lots of Yums, things I'm going to post or talk about. Like I take it one day at a time. I have like a small goal in mind, or a big goal in mind, I guess. But the only thing you can control is the day-to-day. So that's what I try to focus on, not get overwhelmed by all the numbers or everything, standing in my way, just kind of do what I can.
So I totally agree with the propaganda because like for us, we're vegan food bloggers. So we are constantly like, those are the only people that I want to follow and mostly follow on my vegan page. right? That's what I always see in my feed. That's what I'm always cooking. That's what I'm always reading about. But for people who are living their day-to-day life, just they're not chefs, they're not like in the food industry or anything. They just eat to eat, or maybe eat because they're a foodie, but they're just surrounded by what they see on TV, what they hear from their friends and family. And so they're not constantly surrounded by vegan food. And because I am, and you are, I feel like we might think that the movement is growing, and it is growing. I think it's growing more than sometimes more than it is, if that makes sense, because I'm constantly surrounded by it. But if I take the perspective of somebody who's completely like has nothing to do with this industry, they probably maybe once or twice they might hear about vegan food, but like if they're not involved in it, then the only place they're going to get their information from is what they're seeing and reading online. So there does have to be more, I guess the word propaganda, but there does have to be more like representation for the vegan community.
Definitely. And I think it's the responsibility of anybody who owns those types of networks and stuff. I mean, I think gluten-free picked up like a decade ago, like people started seeing more gluten-free foods, and that's been more, incorporated in these popular food blogs or like TV shows. So I don't have a doubt that vegan food will eventually be. But yeah, I mean, it just has to get there, and someone has to be the first one to do it,
And it happened in grocery stores, like we started seeing that representation for our brands. And so I think it's going to happen soon. More advertisements, and like those burger joints, Harvey's and McDonald's or whatever other places, they've picked up on it. And then I think we're going to see it on TV pretty soon too.
I agree.
And so with that, I think we'll end it, unless you had any last comments.
No, I think we covered like a lot of different things I wasn't even thinking I was going to talk about. So thanks for having me, though. It's been awesome.
Of course. And thank you so much for joining.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning into today's episode, and we'll see you next time.